And thank you to all of you tuning in. Hopefully you're sharing it, liking it, subscribing to the newsletter, doing all those good things. I should just explain myself quickly. Got put into isolation earlier this week, which is a bit unfortunate. So the guest I had coming in obviously couldn't come in anymore, and then we weren't able to line him up with his schedule. So it was a little bit uncertain around that, and then just going through the process of sort of with the media manager and all of that, sort of identifying, saying got COVID, can't do the interview, then he got shifted on to do something else. So I couldn't line up a video interview either, which was a little bit frustrating. So unfortunately for you guys, you're stuck with me on my own. So I was initially just not going to do a podcast this week, but I thought what might be good as a last ditch effort was to throw out to the subscribers and just send in some questions for me to answer. Which, I guess we'll see. It may not work. But producers laughing. It may not work. It might work. I guess we'll see. It might be a short episode, and you can bang it out on your way to work instead of having to listen, on your way to work and on your way home. So I guess we'll see. But yeah, so we have rescheduled that guest. Next week will be another cool guest, but I guess this week you've got me. It is Masters Week this week, so it is a good week for me to be in lockdown, to be in isolation. I should also clarify, just going back, I don't have COVID. Someone who lives in my house got COVID. They've since left for a while, but because we were exposed to that person who was staying here, we all, so me, my partner, and my son, all now have to isolate until 7 days post exposure to that individual. So shouts to that guy. I know he doesn't listen to this podcast, so yeah, shouts to you. I'm not going to name and shame on you, but shout to you. Anyway, so I guess, look, let's just get right into it. Let's see if this works. If it doesn't, maybe I won't release this. Who knows? Are these in any particular order? No. Okay, cool. The first one. Why do you hate G'day Law so much? You're trying to trigger me. First question, you're trying to trigger me on my own damn show. You got some balls, whoever sent that one through. I've written about this. So there is a pretty detailed column on the website at thecover.com.au where I kind of go through the drawbacks, I guess the reasons why scrapping it altogether would be a bad idea. And even in its current form, I think it's now 30 tests and 5 years of consecutive Super Rugby service. So even in its current form, it's like it I guess it's okay, but it's basically an acknowledgement that Super Rugby, I guess, is heading toward is heading towards a world where it's a development competition. It's not the pinnacle of rugby in Australia. And I appreciate that we can't compete with the money overseas at the moment. I think Rugby Australia is doing some work to try and rectify that with a sort of hybrid contracting model similar to what they do in New Zealand. I think, I guess, an investigation into what private equity in rugby looks like is happening, which I think is positive. I think if we're going to compete with the money overseas, then we're going to need an influx of cash. But I I guess the major concern is we lose control of the development pathway. So, you know, like Noah Alessio is probably the best example of this. So once he cracks 30 tests, which he's likely to do in the next couple of years, what's keeping him here in Australia? And I guess then Dave Rennie or whoever is the coach at that time then reaches out to whoever he's playing for in the UK or Japan or whatever and says, these are the things that I'm looking for Noah to do or improve on or whatever. And, maybe they'll work with him, but they're just as likely to put up the two middle fingers. The other challenge that the Giteau law stuff presents is that World Rugby has a regulation called Reg 9, and it identifies 2 windows in which players can be released for international duty. Basically, the clubs have to adhere to those windows. Those windows are November for the Six Nations and Spring Tour, I guess, and the July test window, which we've got England coming out to Australia this year, which should be really, really interesting given, England's sort of fall from grace over the last sort of 18 months. So it doesn't benefit the Wallabies a huge amount because our best players aren't going to be able to play in Bledisloe Cup matches. They're not going to be able to play in the Rugby Championship or, whatever they end up calling it with South Africa and Argentina, because those fixtures are played after July. So I guess therein lies the massive problem. So, I don't know that anyone at Rugby Australia has the nous to negotiate with World Rugby and the Northern Hemisphere on extending those windows, changing that regulation. I'm happy to be wrong about that. I hope I am. But I just think it's, I guess I've made my point. And if you want more on that, just head to thecover.com.au, click there's a category, click rugby, scroll down, you'll find it. I can't remember what the title of the article is called, but it's something like, Rugby Australia scrap Giteau law and kill Super Rugby. So something to that effect. The next one, how would you fix the game? Jesus. How much time we got? No. This is a really hard one because I guess there's a bunch of challenges at the moment with rugby in its current state. I think one of the huge challenges at the moment is crowds. Not a lot of people are buying tickets to Super Rugby games. I haven't seen the streaming numbers and the free to air numbers, but so I guess that's one of the issues, and I guess I touched on that last week when I sort of said the current crop of Super Rugby players, I don't know how many of them are active members of their communities, and I'm not talking about club footy. I'm not talking about just chilling at the local coffee shop. I'm talking about what are Super Rugby players doing to help their communities? Are they on advisory boards for not-for-profits? Are they volunteering their time to local schools? To work in the canteen or work in the work on getting kids on and off buses. So what are they doing in that space? I guess that's one aspect. The other aspect is, particularly at club football. Well, to be honest, at any level, what opportunities are clubs, rugby teams, professional teams, what opportunities are those clubs providing, ex-players, ex-staff members, ex-coaches to re-engage and maintain an engagement with the club? Why can't, I'm a retired front rower. I might add, my body can't handle playing anymore. I've talked about my coaching stuff, but I don't engage with the club as a coach. Why can't I go and play, touch sevens or Viva touch or whatever, Foxtel touch, whatever the fuck they're calling it now, for my club against other clubs, with possibly other retired players? Or, why can't I go and play sevens for my club? Why can't I go and play tens for my club? What are the other opportunities that we are providing other than becoming a coach or running the canteen, managing a team? What opportunities is rugby providing for re-engagement? So I guess that's another part of it. We have to look at the game holistically and go, well, so if you look at the NRL, for example, you can play for the Raiders or for the Newcastle Knights as a male or female now. At the NRL level and an NRLW level, you can also play touch for the Newcastle Knights as a male female mixed. So there's just, I guess there's all these other ways we need to think about in rugby. How can we keep these people who sort of come and go, how can we keep them engaged in a way that's not coaching, that's not volunteering, and that's not, playing until you're 50? I've provided a couple of examples on how to do that, but, how are we doing that? And so, we're really struggling with the community aspect connecting to high performance. I see that as an opportunity to go, okay, well, here's the Brumbies Viva Sevens team, and they might play before the Super W girls play. Reserve grade, is that a realistic thing that we can do? Yeah. There's a whole bunch of things. I guess then at the high performance end, centralizing, and I believe they're working on this, but centralizing what we do. And what I mean by that is not that all the best young players move to fucking Sydney or Brisbane and they train together every day and then they just get farmed out to Super Rugby clubs. What I mean is looking at the things that make, so when the Wallabies were successful, what did we have? What were the things that we had? What were the skills we had? What were the types of players we had? And how are we replicating that, or how are we able to find those players and those skills and those, that intelligence and develop that up through our Super Rugby teams and through into our national team? So when I talk about centralizing, I don't mean put everything in one place. I mean a uniform approach to athletic performance, long-term athletic performance. So, making sure players understand benchmarks, players understand, why around lifting in particular. So just looking at it from the lens of everything we're doing. So if you think of it like a pyramid, everything that we're doing at Super Rugby level benefits the Wallabies. Everything that we're doing at club level benefits Super Rugby. And everything we're doing at the junior and schools level benefits club footy. And ideally, we'd like to have the NRC back in there somewhere. But just having an understanding of that, like a trickle down. So, whoever the head of high performance is with the Wallabies is monitoring, consulting, talking to the Super Rugby guys who are delivering there. Then those guys are talking to the clubs, and then the clubs are talking to junior clubs and schools. I feel like that, that kind of approach to athletic development and skill development as well. So, I think you look at Super Footy and a lot of these guys lack refined skill sets. They really do, catching, passing, kicking, even understanding like when to play flat, when to play deep, when to come on the ball with pace, when to shift it, when to throw a cutout and when not to throw a cutout. So some of those intelligence things, and part of that is the way that, God, I'm going on a real tangent here, but part of that is the way that footy is coached at a junior level, and probably up into club footy a little bit too, is this idea of having lots of structure, being told when and where to go and what to do and all of that, and that sort of stemmed from Rod McQueen. And Rod McQueen, I don't know this. I don't know this because I was a kid when all this was happening. I've never met Rod. I've never spoken to Rod. But what I perceive to happen is that, he had a pretty special group of players, and I don't think, anyone would deny that. George Gregan, Stephen Larkham, Joe Roth, Tim Horan, like once in a generation kind of players. And a lot of them, Matt Burke is another good example. And I think he recognised that he had this group of pretty special players, but probably, in the way that they were playing football back then, still not quite good enough to consistently get it over the All Blacks, get wins over the All Blacks. So I think he created a system, a very structured system and scripted system, with the intention of beating the All Blacks consistently, which he you can't deny he did for a period. And then I think because that was successful, that changed the way we as Australians thought about coaching. And so we kind of have this system now where everything is structured. So, and I use this analogy all the time. When I was in school, for example, not as a footballer, as a student, was always told there was a right and wrong answer. Then I got to university, and there would be a question, and they'd go, "Well, what do you think, Liam?" Well, I've been told what to think. I've been told there's a right and a wrong answer. So what's the answer? I don't know. You tell me. And I think that has translated, I guess it's an analogy, but, think about a young fly half. If he's been playing in systems his whole life where he's been told where to go, what to do, who to pass to, what moves to run and all of that, how then is that player expected to think for himself, to look up and identify what's in front of him and play? And I believe that's why Quade Cooper really struggled in Australia initially, is because we weren't able to develop a system around him. We tried to fit him into a system instead of recognizing that, this guy has an elite first step. He's, he has incredible vision. Like, there were so many things that he did at an elite level, but he was almost shackled by structure. And I get that I know that we're going on a tangent here, and I'm not providing any solutions, but I think, yeah, well, I am. What I'm saying is that to wind it back and bring it back to my point is if we have a centralized view of what Australian rugby is, what is the Wallabies like? What are we? What are we good at? What do we want to be our brand? I guess, go to use a business analogy. So if we know what we are and what we want to do, how we want to play, the types of players that we want to attract, then we can take a uniform approach to skill development and acquisition, kicking, passing, IQ, mental skills, all of that, and we can develop a really strong curriculum for that. In the high performance system, which then will hopefully filter down into club footy and schools footy and athletic development. So long-term athletic development and understanding that, we don't just want to put these kids in the gym and get them lifting massive, because that's, that's not necessarily the way to go about it. So understanding, the build to Super Rugby loading. So I think the hype of that element, if we can get that right, I think that would, and I appreciate this. It's a huge job. Like, I I think if Andy Marinos called me right now and said, Liam, I fucking love that idea, let's do it, I'm not sure I'd know where to start. There'd be a lot of unwinding and sort of looking at it, and I guess the other thing is if we want to fix Australian rugby as you've put it, then I actually think we need to commit to a rebuild. In basketball, you often hear NBA franchises talk about a rebuild, and it's effectively a commitment to being poor, to being bad for a while. And I think if we can identify that high level strategy of what we want to be and where we want to go and how we're going to do it, and that's transparent from the top down to fans, whatever, I actually think you'll garner a lot of favor and you'll get a lot of buy-in from people, because they'll be like, okay, finally, there's a plan, there's an understanding that what we've been doing is no good, and now we're moving towards this other model. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we envision it working. This is how the game's going to be developed, blah, blah, blah. Or, like, if really succinct strategy on grassroots feeding high performance, feeding wallabies, whatever, club, schools, juniors, clubs, Super Rugby, wallabies, and hopefully we get an NRC step or, something in there as well. I think that'll actually excite people, and I think it'll get more people wanting to go to football games, because they'll be like, like, we're bad now, but if we nail this strategy, we're going to be really good. And look, I appreciate it might be a 10-year process, but you only need to look at what's happened in Ireland. Is probably the best, most recent example, where they're now starting. David Nusafora is their head of high performance. He was run out the door here in Australia because he proposed a centralised model, and they came knocking at his door because they've seen the success in Ireland. They want to bring him back. I believe he said no. I haven't spoken to him about it, but I assume he said no because he's still there, right? But Ireland is the best example of this, where they've gone through a process of being, a mid-tier international team, but they've really developed their clubs. They've really developed their high performance level, and now they've got a centralized system for men and women. And I believe that there's still more improvement to go, and they're going to be a long-term power in world rugby. The reality is the Wallabies are sitting at 6th at the moment. That's the reality. So I don't know if I answered your question. Apologies. I mean, I guess the other thing I would say on that is the broadcasts are dog shit. Sorry, that's and I mean that from a commentary perspective, and I think I've spoken about this on this podcast before, in that you've just kind of got a bunch of ex-players and rugby guys talking about rugby, and they try and crack jokes and whatever. But to me, the key element that we're missing is someone in there who can actually break down footage and articulate it, or articulate plays and things that are happening on the field, and articulate it in a very simple way, so that if someone was just flicking through by the end of and decided to stop on that channel and watch the game, by the end of the game would at least have would at least feel like they know what's going on. Like my partner's been watching me play. We've been together 7 years, and 5 of those years I was playing football, playing rugby. She would come and watch me every week. And then afterwards, we'd watch the Brumbies or the Wallabies or the All Blacks or Hurricanes, Highlanders, whoever was on the TV. She still doesn't know what's going on. Seriously. And in my view, the broadcast just needs to be better. We need someone in there educating. You're like, oh, Liam, that's stupid. John Madden. Yeah, a lot of you will know about Madden NFL, but John Madden was an incredible football commentator. And it's no secret that as soon as he started commentating, the NFL got much more popular. And it's because he educated people on the game. He would look at a touchdown and he would say to the producers and the camera people, like, I don't want to see this dude running in open space. I want to see the blocks. I want to see the blocks that sprung that guy free and celebrate that and actually educate people on what's happening. When we do a replay of a try, are we highlighting, what actually happened in the lead up to that led to the break? And are we explaining that and articulating that? Because, sometimes tries happen against the run of play, but generally there's a build up to that, and there are things that happen or there's tactics involved to spring someone loose. But I don't get any of that across in the broadcast. Now, would I like that job? I would fucking love that job. If anyone from Stan Sports listening, get me on the broadcast. I'll do it. But I just think, we need to stop being so insular as well. Rugby is so insular. We're not willing to accept help from outside. We're not willing to see other views. And I think that's why we've got, and we don't play nicely with others. Like, rugby might as well be a 4-letter word. Just it's got such a bad reputation. And I think it's just because we burn people and we don't listen. We don't learn lessons because we're so insular. Like, how are we going to learn lessons if it's the same 5 people talking about it in a boardroom all the time? So I think that's key as well. Like, just understanding that there are valid views from people who aren't necessarily rugby people, but understand high performance or understand community groups or understand, communities of practice, understand, how watering the roots benefits the leaves. If you think of the leaves of a tree as high performance and the roots as grassroots. That's what it is. Club footy, schools footy, junior footy. If you just water the leaves, the tree dies. So you got to water the roots. Get a botanist in there maybe. I don't know, but I think we need to stop going to the same well. And I'm pleased that Rugby Australia is starting to recognise that. But, and also understanding, like, sevens is an Olympic sport. Right? Like, so there are a lot of benefits provided by Sport Australia, Sports Commission and the AIS that rugby, could benefit from, in terms of cost-cutting measures, in terms of access to elite coaches and scientists and that sort of thing. So, like, I don't know if they're doing that, accessing research and people to conduct research grants, like. So it's just understanding the environment that they're operating in and what are the things that they can access that are going to help develop the game, to a degree. I don't know how long I just went on that rant for, but, that, I guess, I hope I touched on some of what you were hoping to hear. Next one. Ooh, who do you like for the Super Rugby and Super W titles? I think, so I'll do the Super W first. I think the Drua, the Fijiana Drua, have been pretty fantastic. I really like the way that they play footy. It's unstructured. They throw offloads. They throw passes. They kick. They back themselves. Very physical, very athletic, very fast. So really enjoy all of that. I think the biggest challenge for them now going into finals is they've been away from home for a long time. They're based up on the Gold Coast. I don't know if they're getting paid or not. I don't know how that works. Certainly the men get paid. I don't know if the women do. So I think, at a certain point, that starts to get really hard, being away from friends and family and even the idea of, there's obviously a lot of personalities on a team. If there's friction and you're around each other 24/7 for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, that can be hard. So, I watched the game just before they got past the Brumbies 17-5. It was rainy and all of that. And the rain definitely doesn't suit the Drua. So if it's raining, leading into the finals, I think that's going to be hard for them. That's going to be the opportunity for the Reds or for the Waratahs women to knock them over. So I think, the big challenge now for them is just going to be staying focused, with the pointy end in sight. So I like them. Do I think the Waratahs or the Reds could beat them? I do. The Brumbies showed the blueprint tonight. It was just a shame that the Brumbies didn't create enough opportunities, but they certainly stifled the Fijiana's attack. So Fijiana Drua's attack. So look, I'll say the Drua in Super W, but I think I'll say the Drua, but I'm quietly confident. I'm not saying that's a given. Super Rugby, I guess this is a hard one because we haven't seen. I think you can't go past the Crusaders. They are the litmus test for a successful organisation in sport. The amount of sustained high level success that they have had is quite frankly incredible and improbable. You don't really see that level of success for such a long period in any sport. You could maybe say English Premier League, Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, but even they've gone through patches where they've been pretty average. Man U's going through one right now. The Crusaders don't seem to do that. Like they just seem to every year are top four, and then finals rolls around, and they look like the All Blacks, and I think they play a style of football that relies very very heavily on skill. I would say they are the most skilled franchise, and it's no frills. Like, yeah, it's exciting. They do throw the ball wide. They have some really exciting outside backs, but it really is methodical in approach and really entertaining in delivery, I guess. So I like them. I like what they've seen. To have won five of six, just playing the other Kiwi franchises plus Moana Pacifica is really really impressive. The disparity between top and bottom over in New Zealand, I think, is much less than it is here in Australia. I know that the Highlanders haven't won a game yet, but they've been in every game, I guess. So I haven't won a game against a Kiwi opponent, and I guess the challenge now is they're going to come out to Australia. The back end of the Super Rugby season is going to be played. I don't know. It's really hard to gauge where the Australian teams are in terms of, looking at them versus the Kiwi teams. Like, I watch those New Zealand games and I think they're more entertaining, better skill, lots of offloads, more talented players. But I think it's because those teams are closer. Whereas here, the Brumbies and Reds are sort of the benchmark, and everyone else is kind of vying for third, the third team in Australia. So I'll say I'll say the Crusaders. I think they're going to come out here and win every game, and then it's just going to be about what happens rolling into the finals. Do I think the Brumbies and Reds could win a couple of games against Kiwi opponents? Absolutely. I think they could. Will they? That remains to be seen. The New Zealanders year after year just seem to roll out younger, faster, better, stronger players. So I'll say the Crusaders, but yeah, I think it's going to be a Kiwi team. I think everyone knows that a Kiwi team is going to win. The Crusaders definitely seem to be the top New Zealand team again. Could I see an Australian team playing in the final? Probably not. I'm just going to be realistic. It's 8 teams in the finals. Yeah, I don't see the Brumbies or Reds getting to the final, getting to a semi-final for sure. I think maybe one of them could be one of the final 4, for lack of a better term, or not lack of a better term, lack of a more original idea, for sure. But I don't think there's an Australian team that can win Super Rugby Pacific. So I think the Crusaders have shown that they're top right now. Oh, switching topics. Who do you like at the Masters and why? So few people who listen know this. I'm in a tipping competition, golf tipping competition. This will be my 3rd season as part of that crew. I've never won. In the 3 years that I have been in that competition, I've never picked a golfer who has won a tournament, let alone a major. I'm always in, I generally only miss like maybe 1 or 2 cuts a year, but never picked a winner. So I wouldn't listen to me even if, and I'll tell you, I picked Justin Thomas, and we have this thing where you pick a backup player, and after the first round you can switch off your first choice to your second choice. So my second choice was John Rahm. So after round 1, Justin Thomas was 4 over, and I thought, well, that's not great, given it was pretty good conditions for scoring yesterday, and noting too that Augusta's like one of the hardest courses ever. So when I say good conditions for scoring, it's never really good conditions for scoring at Augusta. And then John Rahm was 2 over, so he was I think he finished the day around 27. So I switched them. John Rahm is still 2 over. JT's 1 under, so he went 5 under today. So that was a bit of a mistake. So Tiger's in the hunt. John Rahm's really consistent. Cam Smith, Aussie Cam, Mullet Man. He had a really good round yesterday, a not so good round today. I think the unique thing about the Masters is very rarely does someone lead from start to finish. Scotty Scheffler is five strokes clear at the moment in the lead, but that's not insurmountable at Augusta. Scotty could have a bad day, someone else could have a really good day. So I think we'll know more sort of tomorrow being Sunday, tomorrow morning, about that. So, after 2 rounds, who do I like? Well, I like Scotty Scheffler. And I think I like JT still, and I wouldn't count Tiger out. Like, I know he's battling with that leg injury, but like, wouldn't that just be the most Tiger Wood things ever to do? Like, hasn't played golf in a year and a half, or a meaningful tournament. He played that tournament with his son, but a major hasn't played in a long time, almost had to have his leg cut off, and comes back and wins the Masters first crack. Like, to me, that would just cement his legacy in golf. And there'll be people here up and I was like, why are you talking about Tiger Woods? He's such a piece of shit, blah, blah. And, that sort of raises an interesting dilemma for me, because I always think about this argument, just because you're good at sport, do you have to be a role model? It's probably a conversation for another podcast. But, I think yes, you have a responsibility to be a role model, but do you have to be one? Probably not. Anyway, so I guess I've given you the lay of the land. Sung Jae Im was good today. Hideki Matsuyama, the defending champ, he came from behind last year and got the win. Dustin Johnson, who, to me is probably one of the best golfers in the game at the moment, and potentially, when he's done, will be one of the best ever. They're all sort of sniffing around. So who do I like and why? At the moment, I like Scotty Scheffler 5 strokes clear. I think that's a significant lead. Even if he can just go around in 1 or 2 over tomorrow, not even shoot an under par round or an even par round, I think he still holds the lead at 8 under. So that's who I like after 2 rounds. Who are your favourite ever golfers? Ooh. Well, Tiger's won. Bobby Jones. So Bobby Jones is a guy, he was an amateur golfer, refused to turn professional. He won the British Amateur, British Open, US Amateur, and US Open all in 1 year. So back in the day, those were considered the four major tournaments. He's the designer of Augusta National, which is where the Masters are being played at the moment. He cost himself a US Open or British Open, I can't remember which now, for calling a penalty on himself, even though his playing partner said, it didn't happen, I didn't see it, no one cares, who's going to know? And, the interesting quote afterwards is they said, that was a really noble thing you did. And he was like, well, you might as well thank me for not killing someone or not, not robbing a bank. He's a very, very fascinating guy. If you've got time, Google him. But he was a guy my grandpa used to talk about a lot for the amateur stuff. He refused to take any money to play golf. He played golf for fun. He was actually a lawyer and an engineer, I think, in the end. Golf course designer, all of that. So, fascinating guy. Obviously never got to see him play, but his stories always intrigued me. There was a guy who used to play on the tour, Hank Keeney. I don't know if any of you will know him. He was a huge monster driver of the ball back in the day. Pales in comparison to what Bryson DeChambeau's doing, but just monster drives. We're talking about 2005, and he had a very unique stance set up and all that, which I tried to emulate, which went really poorly for me as a junior golfer. But so I really liked him. I liked Big Easy, Ernie Els. He had an incredible swing, easy power, just tempo. And speaking of tempo swings, and someone else I like is Nelly Korda. She's unfortunately not playing golf at the moment. She had a surgery to get a blood clot fixed. But if you want to see a pure tempo, beautiful swing, just Google Nelly Korda's swing. She's incredible. And you look at it and you think, wow, that's such an easy swing. But she hits the ball a long way. She can really crank it up. And her sister too, Jess. They got similar swings, a little bit different. Jess has a little bit more power to her swing, but both of them have this really rhythmic, pure tempo swing. It's a weird question for someone who listens to the podcast to ask. But yeah, I guess those are mine. Um, next one. Oh, yes, yeah, yes. Okay, so someone's picked this up from something I said last week. So it says you mentioned the WNBL has made some bad decisions and done some dumb things over the years. Can you give some examples? Okay, so there's some that I can't give. Uh, I'm just trying to think. So I was involved with the UC Caps, have been involved with the UC Caps since 2018. I've since finished my role with that organisation holistically. I still love the Caps. Have had a long affinity for them, being a Canberra kid. One that kind of sticks out, and it's kind of silly, but it does stick out, is we had this player, Kia Nurse, brilliant player, doing some awesome things for TSN in Canada. She's a Canadian, but providing really good commentary, really good broadcaster, awesome personality, awesome person, but awesome player, really fantastic player. And she won the league MVP, and she's the first international player to, imported player as they call it, or import, ever to win the league MVP. And we were told by the league that we had to do this presentation, and we had to do all of this, and we had to provide stuff so that they could do the thing. And Lauren Jackson, who was the head of the WNBL at the time, was going to fly down and whatever. So there was this whole, rigmarole about all the things we needed to do. Got there. There's no MVP medal. And the story that we got told is that Lauren Jackson, who was the head of the WNBL, had posted the medal, and that was sort of the end of it. She didn't tell us that she'd posted it. It seems if she was going to come, she'd just bring it with her, but whatever. And look, to say that things went missing, we lived at the University of Canberra's campus. So to say things went missing often in the post at the University of Canberra would actually be an understatement. Things went missing all the time. Things, were tracked there and said they arrived and they went somewhere else and never saw them again. So that did happen. But she said that she'd posted it to the AIS, and Kia still doesn't have that medal. That one was super silly. I guess the grand final thing is another example. There's been examples where, Mariana Tolo got fined once for putting up a Simpsons GIF on Twitter. The one. I'm not going to explain it, but you can. I think you can read about it. But she got fined $1,200 or something for doing that after Sophie Cunningham effectively clotheslined one of our players and didn't receive the suspension. So there's a lot of examples of them being inconsistent. Having rules and regulations, but then choosing not to use them, which is what happened in the case of the grand final series. And I have to say, like, I'm biased. I struggle to see things through a one league lens because I am so wrapped in and tied up with the Caps. But there have been lots of examples over the years, and I think the problem comes down to, so if you're in league management or competition management, which as the head of the WNBL, that's your core function. You also have some stakeholder management in terms of sponsorships and clubs and players and all of that. Actually, no, one more. Sorry, one more. This one is good. So earlier this year, you might have seen before I get into that. Earlier this year, you might have seen there was a player she had long braids, and there was a player and she was effectively cited a FIBA, which is the governing body for basketball, a FIBA regulation, which effectively banned long braids, or if you had long braids, they had to be tied in a certain way. Now, FIBA had abolished that rule, but the issue wasn't necessarily that she was cited that. The league contacted the player directly, which never happens. Normally, the process would be that the league would go to the team's general manager. The general manager would then go to the team's head coach. And then, if I was advising in that function, we would then bring that player into the office, into the head office or the front office, our team's office, and we would, if it was general manager, head coach, maybe a support person comes in as well, and effectively show them the email or the, the law and say, look, this is what the league has mandated, and then, come up with some strategy to make sure that the player was supported throughout that, whether that be going back at the league and giving them the middle finger or whatever. But the league, and I don't know who specifically at the league, but the league went directly to the player, citing that. So the player, so no process in terms of that, so the player felt targeted. The player was an African American woman, and felt that she was targeted purely because of the color of her skin and because of her hair. Now, and because the rule was outdated. So that's another, I guess I've given you a silly one and two pretty big ones where, they just haven't followed process, haven't followed their own protocols and that sort of thing. So, for someone who's who was in my seat, as part of a front office, it was very frustrating. And anyway, I think that the challenge is when you're in competition management, when you're trying to manage a league, you're trying to run a league, you have to understand that you're not going to please everyone. And that's why you have rules and regs. That's why you have a regs committee. That's why you have a league committee and all of that, because they produce that stuff. And then as the head of the WNBL, you then need to have a really tight understanding of all of those things, so that when stuff happens, you know what the protocol is, you know what the process is, you know what the rule is, and you act based on that. And just understanding that you're not going to keep everyone happy. That you just can't, whatever decision you make, you're never going to, everyone is not going to be happy, which is why you need to be able to fall back on the rules. You can't just fucking do your own thing. So I don't think people who go into that role fully grasp that concept yet. And so I think therein lies the massive challenge is you need someone in that role who is thick-skinned, logical, is happy when they get into the role to just sit there and read through, tons of meeting minutes and league notes and rules and regs and, have meetings with FIBA and do all that boring stuff before they get into the fun stuff, which is the delivery and getting new sponsors and broadcast deal and all of that. There's obviously a lot of stuff that goes into that role, but I think that's just what you need to understand is rules and regs are there for a reason. Generally, the teams have agreed to those, and it's your job to enforce them. Yeah. So I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for sharing those three things with you. But yeah, I guess those are, three examples. Yeah. All right, last question here. You've mentioned in your columns that you're an F1 fan. When are we getting an F1 episode? Okay. I don't remember ever mentioning that in my column, but that's fine. I guess for some background, I attended university in New Zealand for a couple of years, 3 years. I only walked away with a year's worth of credits, unfortunately. And I became somewhat nocturnal during those times. I was working in a bar. I was getting up early to do my gym work, and then I'd go to uni and train. And so I was up early or late, depending on, day of the week, whether I was working or whether I was getting up to do my training, prior to my day to make sure I was hitting my HP goals. And there was a group of people who were really into Formula One. One of them was an RA, a residential advisor or assistant or whatever. And there are a couple of people, in my cohort. And so we had this TV room in our residence, university residence. So in New Zealand, you kind of just stay there for a year and then you go off into the world and rent an apartment and whatever, be a big boy. But anyway, we had this sort of common TV room, and, most weekends, between sort of the hours of, 3 a.m. and 7 a.m., F1 was on the TV. And this is back. I'm dating myself here, but this is before streaming services. So the only forms of entertainment we had were sort of Foxtel. They called it Sky in New Zealand, or you needed to carry around like a folder full of DVDs. So I used to, or a hard drive with illegally downloaded movies on it. So I would often sort of come home from work, or come home from the gym, or be on my way out to the gym, and I would sit with them and sort of watch. And like initially it didn't make any sense to me. It was kind of boring. But then they started explaining to me the tactics and, who's who on the teams. And, so I became invested that way. And then, as someone with a media bent, like I really like the broadcast. I like the way the commentators explain things, getting the radio feeds and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I kind of got into it, and then fell away for a number of reasons. I think it's really hard, like, if you follow 3 or 4 sports really closely, like it's hard to keep up with a 5th or 6th or 7th. So I think, that's a challenge. And so I sort of kept an eye on it, but stopped following it. And then, like everyone in the world, it seems like, the F1 Drive to Survive documentary came out on Netflix, and, I was right back in it. So I've been doing this a lot tonight, going on a tangent, but to answer your question, it's coming. I'm working on something. I'm not sure yet whether it'll happen or whether it'll come through, but I am working on something to do an episode on Formula One. It is a challenging process, is what I'll say. I might get into trouble if I reveal too much, but it is a challenging process at the moment. But I'm working on it, is all I'll say. And I'll preface it too by saying that it won't just be me here. It will be someone else or a bunch of other people. And, Grand Prix this weekend, tomorrow, pumped to have it back in Melbourne. Unfortunately, wasn't able to go this year with our infant son. It's probably not a great space for him, but it's something that I would really like to do and kind of make a semi-regular thing. My partner is into it now because of the documentary too. So it's coming. That episode is coming, and You know, if for those who maybe haven't seen the documentary yet, I recommend doing it. Like, go and watch it. It's really cool. It's really interesting. And, you know, pick a team. Ferrari doing good things this year so far. You know, Mercedes look like they've fallen back to the pack a little bit. You know, McLaren too. Ricciardo and Norris seem to be really struggling with those cars. And I guess that's the other thing I really like about it. It's so, like, avant-garde. Like, you know, it's a bunch of guys sitting around like, how do we make this car go faster? Let's try some shit. I'm sure it's much more technical than that, but, you know, kind of reminds me of, you know, when you're a kid. I don't know how many of you built, you know, like a billy cart or anything like that. It just kind of reminds me of that, you know, sitting around with your friends going like, let's build this billy cart so we can push each other down a hill and we'll give it wings and we'll make it, you know, we'll put a lawnmower engine in it and make it, you know. I'm sure that's exactly what the F1 engineers are talking about. So anyway, it's coming. That's all I'll say. That's it. All right. Didn't get many questions coming through. Mustn't have a very big subscriber base. All right, well, that's it then. Yeah, look, thank you to those who sent questions through. Oh, there were more? Yeah, okay. Oh, well, we're at an hour. Yeah. Anyway, thank you to those who sent questions through. I actually enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed hearing me answer them. Yeah, maybe we'll do another one of those at some point. Yeah, maybe I've got Lydia Williams coming back again. So I'll tell you what, if you've got questions for her, flick them through. So you can either do that through my Instagram page, which is @Give'emLiam, or you can email us, admin@thecover.com.au, and just say attention, Give 'em Liam podcast, and then put your question in the email. I think that's the best way to do that. So thanks to whoever's going to listen to me ramble for an hour. The Cover Podcast Network, thecover.com.au. Please make sure you get there. Have a look at what's going on there. Fifth and Dribble are doing 2 podcasts a week. The Daily Dribble doing 1 a week. I've got 1 a week. Tobias Canning's doing his NRL column. There are more podcasts coming in the next few months. There's more columnists coming on. There's more content being released every single day. Something is happening. You can find us on Instagram @thecoverAU. One word, AU, like Australia. Make sure you do that. Click on some ads on the website, or just look at them. Impressions count too. And I will be back next week with another episode. Hopefully with a guest. I guess we'll see. Thanks all. See you next week.